Hey, welcome to Pam Didner's monthly webinar. So happy to have you here. I want to talk about how you can create global content marketing strategy. There are three topics I want to talk about. Number one, how to think about global content, right? So the thinking approach. Number two, what are the core elements that needs to be included as a part of plan? Number three, what about localization and the repurposing of content? What should you do about that? So let's get started. When it's time to create global content plan, it's complicated, right? I have to tell you, it's complicated. Content marketing by itself is complicated enough, but if you want to scale and more on the global scales, it's hard, right? So people drink a lot if you are doing global content marketing. Trust me, I was one of them. And you fight a lot, between different divisions or the business unit, or even within different marketing function. And you do a lot of therapy sessions. So if you feel stressed about content marketing, try to scale to a different regions, you are not alone. I want to say that one more time. You are not alone. And you feel frustrated, you feel depressed, you feel sad, you feel like I cannot move things forward. That's all very typical. So I want to make sure you understand that's very typical and you don't feel frustrated about it. You are not alone. Everybody feel the same way. What I want to do today are three things. I want to share with you in terms of how you can think about global, the word global differently. Number two, how to comprehend different elements that you need to add or you need to set up as a part of your plan. Number three, localization and the repurposing of the content, right? So these are the three topics I want to talk about. Number one is what I focus on for majority of my webinar. From my perspective, many B2B marketers love to get templates and they love to dive into a know-how immediately. What I have done marketing for a long time, and I have noticed you need to actually focus on your thinking approach. It's what I call a critical thinking. How do you approach a specific problem, right? Understand how you can address that. The templates will come later. But most of us, including myself, a lot of time I was like, tell me how to do it. All right, give me a template so I can copy or modify. But really the things I want to talk about today, good chunk of it, is to help you how to think to approach this specific topic. Then I will provide the templates that you can use, and I will address the localization and the repurposing of content. So in terms of scaling the global content marketing strategy, we need to break down to two elements. One is content marketing, the other one's global, right? I want to define this so you understand what that means and we're on the same page. The content marketing, why do we do content marketing? At the end of the day, we want to acquire new customers and also increase business, increase revenue from existing customers. That's the main reason we share content marketing. Content marketing is basically at the end of the day, ultimately, is you need to retain your customers and also get new accounts. Let's be very honest about that, okay? But the way that we're going to do it is we are going to share relevant, valuable, and engaging content. It's something that's valuable to our audience. So you don't create content for the sake of content. That's content marketing. The next thing I want to talk about is global. When I say global, it stresses people out. They were like, oh my God, I need to think about 129 countries out there. No, when I'm talking about global, especially on the client side, if you're on the client side or if you're an agency working with a client, you need to define global in the sense of internal communication and collaboration. Does that make sense? When a company decides to do a global content plan, that means they have grown outside of their country, or they have grown outside a specific region, right? So if that's the case, it's the headquarters and the local and regions that work together. So when I'm looking at the global content plan, I'm thinking through inside of your company, what can you do to make sure the local level and you are working together? Does that make sense? That's the global content marketing plan I'm talking about. So I'm not necessarily talking about, oh my God, how to scale the content to 129 countries. That we'll discuss it, but we need to discuss it in a plan, in a process, in a collaboration type of manner. So the holy grail of any kind of global content marketing plan is the HQ and local on the same page. They're on the same page on a couple of things: strategy, people, processes, tools, and the budget, right? It's basically you guys are doing it together, moving forward, right? It's not like you yourself creating a global marketing plan. You need somebody to actually work with you to make that happen. So the plan I'm going to share with you have two elements on every single session. Every single section has two elements you have to consider. There's a global, there's a local. When I say global, it's basically the headquarters direction. Okay. When I say global, like I said, is a headquarter. Your headquarter or your corporate have a specific direction in terms of what needs to be done, and there's a local's needs that the local team need to elevate and voice their concerns. So every single element should have the headquarter voice, also should have local elements. That's what I'm talking about: global elements and the local elements. And for many of you have come to my sessions multiple times. When I talk about plans, I want to talk about several elements that needs to be included in that plan. And by the way, mine is not perfect. That you have to take my templates and you have to modify as you see fit. Does that make sense? There might be additional elements you need to add it, but I'm identifying key elements that needs to be added as your content plan. Well, number one is, what do we want to accomplish as a part of content plan? To whom do we market, right? Whom do we create the content for? And what is editorial plan and the content roadmap? What can we say? And how much money do we need? What is the measurement of success? So those are the key elements that needs to be part of the content plan. And I talk about templates. Everybody loves templates. I do too. So the template part of it, it's really, I translate the questions into a certain templates that you can follow. Two-pager, persona, high-level editorial, messaging framework, budget breakdown, and the key performance indicators. What do we want to accomplish? That's what I call two-pager. If you have attended my webinars in the past, or 7 key elements of a marketing plan, I talk about two-pager. And for this specific two-pagers, I modify. It's slightly different than the two-pager I shared with you in my previous session that talking about the overall marketing plan. And in general, I encourage all my clients and all the people who attend my webinars, when you create any marketing plan, you need to have an executive summary as the cover of your plan. Okay, don't start like going to a detail, but create a summary that your senior management or your marketing peers can look into these two-pager and say, okay, I know exactly what Pam wants to talk about. Right. So these two-pager, from my perspective, is super critical. You can modify as you see fit. It always starts with the business goal, the business objective, marketing objective, giving that this is a content marketing plan, and then you have a content marketing objectives, which is a subcategory of the marketing objectives overall. Does that make sense? Okay. Once you have that, who are the people that you are going to create content for? The buyer's persona, and given that this is a global content marketing plan, what are some of the target countries you want to go after that you prioritize? In languages for the translation, target countries, Canada, maybe for the languages needs to be English and Canadian French for that matter. So the countries and languages are not necessarily exactly the same. The key tactics, what you want to do, and the KPI, which is key performance indicators. If you actually have these two-pager as your cover of your marketing plan, you pretty much provided a summary to your senior management and also your stakeholders in terms of what you want to do. They can look at this and say, okay, I get it. I disagree with you. I agree with you. But it's a summary level that aligns everybody. So let me share this with you. The business goal is usually revenue, percentage of growth from year to year, or market segment share. right? MSS. So it can be revenue, MSS, or the percentage of growth from year to year. The business objective, what is the annual business objective you want to accomplish as a team, at the company level, at a high level, right? Now you narrow that down to the marketing objectives. In general, on the B2B marketing side, we are doing a couple things. We want to build a company as a thought leader, right? That's one objective. Or we want to build a broad brand awareness. That's another objective. The other one is drive demands. In general, the marketing objective is very similar from company to company. So you can use this as a template. Then once you have that, move that down one level. What are some of the content marketing objectives that you want to accomplish to meet that marketing objectives above? Does that make sense? So right here, you go down to a little bit details. All right, so we want to support the company as a trusted thought leader in a certain industry. Well, we need to deliver valuable education contents through multiple marketing channels for demand gen, for example. So you have to list it in terms of what are some of the content that you want to create for thought leadership and what is your PR play for that. And for the demand gen specifically, deliver valuable educational content through multiple marketing channels in terms of what, in how many countries, support the language integrated marketing campaigns in these countries with relevant, compelling content. So list it for any kind of non-priority countries, you're going to create some sort of content kit to actually support them. Does that make sense? So listed some of the content marketing objectives that you want to do to actually support your marketing, overall marketing objectives. And then of course, your buyers personas, the target countries, the languages. And when you do a key tactics right here, remember, I'm talking about global content plan. The global content plan, again, at the headquarters level, what are you going to do? At the geographies and the country level, what will they do? So have some key tactics that you can list it and kind of tell everybody in terms of what you will do. Like for example, there are certain content will be created by headquarters, but there are certain content will be localized and translate at the local level. And also they probably focus on the content marketing campaigns, right? They are the one have to do a lot of pay marketing campaigns at the local level. It may not be at the a corporate level. So you can kind of differentiate who is doing what. Then the key performance indicators, focus on the content's contribution. What is content's contribution to leads at the local level? And this probably needs to be tracked at the local level. That's not something corporate can track unless your market integration is done at the corporate level and every country is using exactly the same MarTech tools. If they are all using the same CRM, if they are using all the same marketing automations, then at the corporate level, you can track that. If you don't have the technology integrated fully, then a lot of leads information needs to come at the local level, at the country level. Does that make sense? And if you do product launches, what is the press coverage, positive press coverage, and the downloads on the website? This might be tracked at the HQ level, content creation, who is creating, and how many are localized. Does that make sense? So this is a kind of nice slide. A lot of time, I want to tell you, when you create your plan, a lot of factors or a lot of content planning has not been done. It's okay. You can put a placeholder first and then determine what you want to add, right? So in general, for that two-pager, it needs to be led. Let me say that one more time. It needs to be led by headquarters or the corporate. You have to lead that marketing effort in terms of driving the two-pager. This is not something that the country or local level can do. So have you noticed? I'm talking about global elements and the local element as a part of plan. This is how you need to look at it for every single section of your plan. Same thing for the persona, right? Persona, very important. When you have a persona identified, it will guide your messaging development and also drive your content editorial planning. So the persona is very, very critical. And if your company has like 18 to 20 persona, you have to prioritize it. Then there's another layer to that is once you prioritize it, you have to think through for that specific persona, do we need to have a local version of it? right? So for example, Louis Lane persona, right? But I market my product also to China. And do I need a Chinese version of it, right? This has got to be a conversation with your marketing team based in China. Is it necessary? You have to look at the commonality between the local persona and also the corporate persona. Here is a corporate persona, but in the content marketing, I kind of took this one and I made some changes right here, right? For content marketing, if I want to do a content marketing, I want to talk about Lois Lane. And she is interested in the crime data related to cybercrime, human trafficking, sex-related offenses, terrorism, whatever topic. So identify a specific topic that she is interested, and this information will give me a clue in terms of editorial I want to do. She loves long form content. Okay, that gives me a clue that the content I created, a good chunk of it probably needs to be long form. But she watches video and listen to podcasts. That means I probably have to look into a video format and also audio format if necessary, right? She uses her mobile phone on regular basis to read content. That gives me an information that the content I created needs to be dynamically scaled for mobile phone. And she's on Twitter 24/7. If she's on Twitter 24/7, guess what? One of the channel that we are going to use is going to be on Twitter. Does that make sense? You have to modify your corporate version. And when you are looking into content marketing, you have to write in a way that how that fit into your content planning and to showcase that you understand the persona from content marketing's perspective. And then compare that information, say, with the local persona and determine if they are completely different or they are very similar. If they are very similar, you can use this version applied to all other countries. But if they are different, then you need to think through in terms of what are the differences for the Inli, which is a Chinese version. She probably uses WeChat. She doesn't use Twitter, but she uses WeChat. So if that's the case, and then we need to think through in terms of if we want to syndicate the content on the Chinese channel, what needs to be changed. So, how many personas? Well, the fewer, the better, okay? In general, if you look at the two-pager I share with you, I talk about 2 or 3 personas. The bottom line is you have limited amount of budget and resources, all right? You cannot make everybody happy in the company. Your senior management, your product team say, we have to market to this 18 persona. No, you can't. You don't have a limited amount of budget. Therefore, it's very important to narrow down the people you want to go after. My recommendation is 2 or 3, okay? If you can find commonalities and you don't have to create localized persona, that's even better. But sometimes you have to. I totally understand that, right? So trying to find that balance in terms of number of the persona you need. And the most important thing, you have to consider your budget. If your management are telling you you have to market to 18 persona, ask them for budget. Basically tell them for this kind of budget or this kind of resources, we can only do this much. Does that make sense? You need to have that very honest conversation with your management. A lot of people will ask me, okay, what is the priority countries? And that it depends on companies. And what I have seen based on my experience working with many enterprises, the typical priority country tend to be US, Germany, UK, Japan, Australia, and Korea. For developed countries, for emerging countries, tend to be Brazil, China, Russia, India, Indonesia, or Malaysia. But I'm not saying these are the ones that you should follow. That's not my point. My point is based on my experience working with many enterprises, these tend to be the countries they prioritize. But if you are not one of these countries, don't worry about it. You still should voice your concern and have a frank conversation with your headquarters. Okay, another thing I want to share with you, I do actually have a Facebook community called Build Your Marketing Skills to Get Ahead. And if you are interested and would like to ask me questions, you can always send me an email, hello@pamdidner.com, or reach out to me on any social media channels, or you can join our Facebook community. Yay! I answer everybody's question personally. I do. Okay.
By the way, Pam, sorry to interrupt. We have one question from Ty Lee.
Sure. Should they use a different plane for a product? You know, that's actually a great question. personally would not create a content marketing plan for different products. However, however, I understand in the big companies like Microsoft, Bean division, Bean, Microsoft Bean, that division is like $1 billion division. If you are supporting them, you probably have to create for that specific product. They have Office 365. If you want to create content marketing plan for Office 365, that has to be a marketing plan of its own. But if you are a mid-sized company or you are a small company, do you have to create that for different product and as a different version of plans? My recommendation is that should be budget driven. If you have $3 million on the content side, and maybe that warrants a content marketing plan of its own. But if your budget is very small and you support multiple products and multiple division, you should create just one and let everybody have a holistic view in terms of what your plan will look like, how you support different divisions. Does that make sense? So from my perspective, that really depends. I will look at the budget first and use that as a factor to make that determination. More than happy to talk to you a little bit more offline. I hope that answered your question a little bit. If nothing else, get you start thinking about the approach that you want to take. Okay? Good question though, by the way. Keep it coming. The next things I want to talk about, the biggest elements of a content marketing plan from my perspective is editorial plan. You need to somehow show some sort of content roadmap. Okay. You need to actually have in your content marketing plan, you need to have some sort of content that you think through in terms of what you want to publish in next quarters or the coming year. And there are many ways to do editorial plan. There's not one way that you can do it. I want to show you three different ways to get you thinking. Again, right here, the purpose of all my webinar is I want to help you to think. Like you need to understand how to think. The way you think will help you to solve the problem and determine the approaches that you want to take in terms of what needs to be done. Does that make sense? So the three editorial plan I want to share with you. Number one, you can call it buyer's journey, but it doesn't have to be kind of like the stages that people go through to buy your product, right? For a lot of B2B companies, they have learned about your product. And then once they learn about the product, they feel there's a need. They have to plan it to determine how they want to buy because a lot of time the enterprise product, it takes time to actually source a right products before they buy. So they have the plan, they have to make a decision in terms of how in terms of what decision that needs to be made, which is a sourcing decision, and then they make a purchase. You have to think through in terms of within your company, do you actually have kind of like a stages, a purchase stage that your company as a whole kind of agree in terms of plan, decide, and purchase, which is kind of nice, right? And then you can provide a definition in terms of from user's perspective, I have an issue about something and I need to address these issues. All right, plan is what do I do? How do I do a research to solve the problem? Decision, what tools do I need? How can I get people to come together to solve this problem to help make decision and then make a purchase? If you have this, you can create this template and then you can identify some of the contents that you want to create. Those contents, like I said, may be very common and may not rank you very high organically. Like if you are learning something about specific technology, 10 things you need to know about either technology or product. The future trends of your products or the technology that adjacent to it. All right. And a certain type of cloud, a cybersecurity 101, for example. What are specific technology? So you can see right here, I created some sort of templates to get you think in terms of the type of content that you can create, right? It's that right here is not necessarily try to create something to game up on Google to make sure it rank higher. You create this because you want to be helpful to your potential prospects. And they are looking for something like this, and you want to create the the content that related to addressing their issue and also specific buy-in stage. I have people come to me and say, Pam, those are very common topics. I cannot win on SEO. I am not here to win on SEO. I'm not here to tell you that create this can actually rank you higher organically. but thinking from the perspective that you create this, try to help your customers or your prospects. Does that make sense? So it's a different objective. So that's one way of creating editorial. Another way is by time. Can you, because you create an editorial and you know that what kind of content you're going to create in Q1, what kind of content you're going to create in Q2, Q3, and Q4. So maybe you have a specific themes associated with it right here. And this is a more B2C type of example is for a boutique hotel. Then you identify what some of the content that you can create in addition and related to the Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. So this is based on time, what content will be created when. And this is based on some sort of learning stage. This is another way. It's kind of more like a customer journey. People become aware of your products or because they have a specific pain point they want to address. Then they start educating them and doing a lot of Google search, talk to their peers, right? And they select the content, they try to do onboarding, and then they try to expand, right? So again, this is kind of more on the customer journey, but it's a slightly different than this one. They are very similar, but they are different. But this is really focused on a customer journey from the time they become aware of their problem down to expand to multiple different divisions or different manufacturing sites. For each one of them, can you identify the specific questions that they are asking? You know, during the awareness stage, what type of question they are asking? Have those questions and then create the content associated with that question. Does that make sense? So when you are looking for editorial, there are many ways to do your editorial planning. I would suggest you can do time, you can do like certain stages, or you can do a customer journey. Right. Again, you don't have to list all the content. The list of content that from your perspective is relevant, is key, is something that either at the global level that it will be scaled down to the local or the country level. I'm not asking you to list all the content. That's not my point. All right. There's now two layers of complexity in terms of content, editorial planning. One is repurposing the content. The other one is the translation and localization of content, right? So when you do editorial, you're like, oh my God, I created one slide. It looks great. Fantastic. But there are two more layers you have to consider and you have to address as a part of this session. For example, you have a 1 to 18-page white paper. This is great. You know, everybody loves long form. But for this, you probably can create a presentation. You probably can do 5 short blog posts. You probably can do an infographics. You can do a video animation. You can do a podcast interview with author if you have a podcast. You can do a whiteboard exercise, you know, by Intel. I was working with Intel at that time with your subject matter expert, right? So here is there are different ways to repurposing your content, right? If you actually have millennial study in China, Germany, or in the US, right, there are 3 separate studies. You can also combine them into an international study, right? This is another using consolidating several small pieces of content into one. If you want to be very sophisticated, you can put different pieces of content together to create new content. Customer sharing their pain points, right? And then CEO announced a new product to address that pain point. You can add these two together. You add 3 or 4 slides to show the new product benefit. Boom, that's a new video. So there are multiple ways to actually repurposing the content. Now this layer has a complexity on the global content, right? So if you are repurposing content, right, they probably can do it at the local level, but how are you going to showcase this as a part of your editorial plan? It's hard. It's hard, right? Another layer is language localization, right? Colors. And for example, the color of wedding dress is not necessary. Why in some countries, like in China, is red. Red is great. Red is new white. When you celebrate a holiday, the Chinese New Year, Jewish New Year's, Islamic New Year, right? A different holiday, right? So when you actually like a holiday blog post in the US, I'm telling you that probably not going to be like necessary, or the time is not be most relevant in China, for example, right? Sports, footballs in the US versus football in the rest of the world. Do I have to say anything more on that one? Religion, I really don't have to address that one. Physical year in China's one of the biggest shopping days is November 11th, 11/11. That's called Singles Day. For us, Black Friday after Thanksgiving, right? So when you create content, especially promotional content, the timing actually matters, right? Fourth content, the terminology matters, right? And fourth sounds like death in Chinese. It is true. That's how they say it. It really sounds like death. In some buildings, you don't see the fourth floor, right? Language usage is very, very different. And Becky is a pickup truck. I didn't know that, right? Technical and medical terminology on the B2B side, radiation cancel therapy versus Cobalt 60, they're exactly the same thing, but everybody say it different, right? Seeing 20, and then 6 in the UK, right? 6 months, so you see at a 6 meters when an average person can see at a 6 meters. And that's 2020 when you see at 20 feet when an average person can see at a 20 feet. That's 2020. So this language localization adds another layer of complexity in terms of editorial planning. But this kind of detail, you need to be aware of it, right? I don't know if necessary to actually have the localization and language translation issues to be brought up as a part of your plan, but you need to make sure that you are aware of it and the local team is aware of it to actually work with you to translate some of the content at the local level. Again, I also have a YouTube channel. Can you tell I'm a YouTuber? Anyway, if you want to check out some of my YouTube channel materials, feel free to subscribe. I don't do my YouTube channel on regular basis because I'm so busy. But there are some content I'm usually pretty passionate about, and I'm very much focused on how to. So a lot of video I created is only 8 to 10 minutes long, and it really focus on how to. Okay? All right, this is another information I want to share with you. If you have a content management library, great, right? And you can probably pull the information directly from the content management library, right? What product that you are supporting? So I go back to the questions the gentleman was asking, the content titles, and the format, language, persona, purchase funnel, owner, completion date. So this is kind of templates, but like I said, many companies have quite a bit of content. You cannot track everything. You can. Okay. What you need to look into is what are some of the key content that require the most budget. Then you should actually have something that you have some of the sheets that you can track and everybody can see. Does that make sense? So this is one way, and it can also be done, like I said, based on your customer challenges and the purchase journey. Messaging framework. Again, when I talk about messaging framework, you have to look at the global level and the local level. And a lot of time, many company will say, "Oh, I only have one messaging framework. It's a product driven, and that here are the key benefits I want to talk about, and the other feature, and these are the key features." Yes and no. Okay, if you actually have a product, the same product you are selling across different country, and the usage model is exactly the same, yes. But what if there's a certain features that is dialed up or used more frequently in a certain countries? You probably have to dial up certain features for that specific country, right? So now that comes back to a customer challenges. I would strongly suggest when you are looking at messaging framework or your product messagings, look from the customer challenges perspective, right? If and look at key countries like U.S., Spain, and or Brazil. Look at some of the key countries and see if the customer challenges are similar. If they are, yes, you don't have to localize or customize your messaging framework too much. But if they are different, then you probably have to address that. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is the budget breakdown. In many companies, um, especially when I work with clients, the budget breakdown is not part of marketing plan. That's because many companies or marketers, they don't want to share their budget broadly and openly. I totally understand that. But as a content marketing goes, good chunk of it is production. Content creation, content production, it requires budget. So it's nice to actually share with everybody, be transparent about the content creation, content production, how much it's going to cost. And you can do that by your editorial topics. You can do that by products. You can do that by, a translation support. You have to write those down. I work with many senior management. A lot of time they were like, "Oh, you know what? I create a blog post. That should be pretty cheap, right?" Not really. If you want a high quality one, it's kind of expensive. And also, translation is not cheap. Oh, we can do machine translation. Yes, you can do machine translation. It still requires human to kind of edit it and look at the machine's translation, make sure it's proper and fitting, right? So that still requires time and budget. So make sure that you have budget and showcase that and share that with the management. I always suggest people to break down by quarter, right? The annual budget is like, oh my God, it's very hard for management to swallow. But if you break it down by quarter, it's kind of easy to show like, okay, it's not expensive. Now we look at 4 quarters. And sometimes your Q2 and Q3 budget will go up tremendously and you can call it out. That has a lot to do with product launches, for example, right? So this is how to showcase the budget summary. The next I want to talk about is KPI. All right, this is hard. You know why it's so hard? That has a lot to do. Content is content is content. Content by itself doesn't do squat, right? A blog post, you created a blog post, right? That's just a blog post. But that blog post needs to be uploaded to your website. So it's a function of a marketing channel. Let me say that again. Any content you created is just a content all by itself. But for content needs to be effective, you have to see that as a part of a marketing channel, right? So you have to upload your blog post to the website, and you can probably do email marketing, the same blog post that can be part of email outreach. Again, all this is part of a marketing channel, right? It cannot stand alone. That's why it's so hard to measure content or the content contribution because it has to be part of something. So, with that being said, when you are trying to measure the content, you really have to think through in terms of how the content is used for different channels. And their metric should also be part of your metrics. Does that make sense? Like, for example, the event collateral, they put your content on the table of the event, right? But the way that you're going to measure that is number of quality, is the business card that's collected. How does that contribute to in terms of a number of the business leads or the business card that was collected at the event, right? When you do a social media, drive the traffic to the website. That has a lot to do number of the views, number of like, number of share. And you were like, okay, this is kind of redundant. No, it's not necessarily. It's you are part of your metrics. And that's something you have to educate your management. Does that make sense? The most important thing you can see, I actually have like the channel specific metrics here. But the important metrics that you need to know is how can you tie some of your content effort or the impact of your content into the two-pager, right? The content, the metrics that was indicated as a part of two-pagers. Events, can you look into a number of qualified MQLs, right? This has a lot to do with come down to the two-pagers. And social media is not necessarily number of the likes, views, and share. It's really, if the call to action is to sign up for the webinars and the contact sales team, can you track that? The email campaigns, what is the specific call to action? Again, contact sales and the webinar signed up, right? So can you tie your content effort to a very specific call to action, to something that the management cares? And even print ad, a lot of time has QR code, right? Can you track how many people download the QR codes? So that tie with a metric from my perspective is not has a whole lot has a little bit more meaning to it. Does that make sense? Can actually tie more to sales, not directly, but it's indirectly more tied to the sales team. Okay, so I talk about all those key elements in terms of a global content plan. Like I said, when I look at that, I'm looking at it internally in terms of how you guys, how the internal team, especially the local team and the corporate team, can work together. Right? So you have to work together in terms of the business goals, metrics, and also determine content's ROI contribution. This is the important part. The discussion needs to happen. That's what I'm trying to say. Agree on number of the pieces of content that you will do and will produce, and also what will be localized and translated. And I always suggest that for content marketing team, you need to co-own lead generation and campaign metrics. So a lot of time, the email marketing team, they have their own metrics, but you need to co-own that with them. Okay, tell them, hey, I'm contributing. Let's co-own that metrics together. Find ways to add value to your local teams and establish a regular communication process. So I actually wrote a very specific blog post in terms of how to build that communication process. On the bottom of that blog post, I talk about agendas that you can use when you build that communication process. Here is the truth. When you are working on the global marketing plan, there's a lot of dramas and chaos. Okay? Seriously, they are. You just have to embrace it. There's not much to it. Okay? It's complicated. It is. I say that from the beginning. I'm going to say that at the end. There's no shortcut. A lot of time people will come to me and say, I'm looking for a more easier way to do it. For global content, there's no easy way. Even the templates I'm sharing with you, it takes time and effort and working through the humps to get through the point that you have something that you can share with your management. That's, I have not, seriously, if you have a shortcut, please share with me. I have not found a shortcut. So I just want to let you know that this is something you have to work through. And I hope some of the elements that I'm sharing with you is helpful. So for today, these are the three objectives. I want to help you think the global a little bit differently. And for your plan, there's a global element, there's a local element, right? And I share 6 or 7 elements in terms of what you can incorporate as a part of your content marketing plan. And I also talk about the localization and repurpose of content that, like I said, that has another complexity to it, but that's something that needs to be considered. I do quite a bit of speaking, keynote workshop and training. If you need any help on that to help your internal team to educate, in terms of content marketing, more than happy to help. Raise your hand. I do a lot of one-on-one mentoring and coaching as well. Most of the time, clients hire me to do consulting work. I'm usually in the trenches with them, trying to get things done. So, and I do content marketing, sales enablement, messaging framework, MarTech planning, implementation, etc. All right, that's it. I know the webinar is a little long, but I hope you find it useful and relevant. If you have any questions, reach out to me anytime on any social media channels or email me hello@pamdidner.com. If you like the content, I publish content like this on a regular basis, so subscribe below. And I love, love, love to hear from you. Take care. Bye-bye.